This is Doug, and this is Doug's hometown. Grab some snacks and your favorite beat CD because we're going on a road trip. A road trip through the real world of Bluffington. More precisely, my hometown, the greater Richmond area of Central Virginia. I'm going to show you all of Doug's favorite hangouts, schools, and even his house while explaining how they packed an entire city's worth of character, personality, and love into just 7 animated seasons. The series Doug was created in 1991 by Jim Jenkins. It was the very first Nickelodeon Nicktoon original to ever air, becoming a defining face of the channel. The show's about Doug, a painfully average kid who just wants to go to school, hang out with friends, and blend into the background of his city. All of this, including Bluffington, is heavily based on Jim Jenkins' childhood growing up as a part of a small area called Lakeside in Henrico County, an area surrounding the city of Richmond. Which brings us to our very first stop on the road. The Honker Burger. In the show, the Honker Burger is an iconic restaurant where the school kids can grab a burger and fries and just hang out. It's the very first place Doug goes to when he arrives in Bluffington. This is where Doug first meets his best friend Skeeter, his crush Patty, and the school bully Roger. Its real-world equivalent, confirmed by Jim Jenkins, was a drive-in burger hub called Kelly's. Located on Arthur Ashe Boulevard, the restaurant was right off I-95 and was known for its 15-cent hamburgers. Eventually, Kelly's went out of business, but it has since been reincarnated as Boulevard Burger and Brew. They've got a menu item called the Kelly's Classic, and hopefully they'll add a Honker Burger in the near future. The restaurant opened in 2016 and has quickly captured the vibe of Richmond and by proxy, Doug. Whether it was by design or not, Doug's quirky atmosphere, coupled with his boisterous and imaginative dream concepts, feels so familiar when I think about Richmond. I choose to sit down and eat here, but sometimes Doug and friends took their Honker Burgers down to Lucky Duck Lake and had a picnic or went fishing. Which brings us to our next destination. 3 miles south on Arthur Ashe Boulevard sits one of the city's most well-known areas, Bird Park. Here there are 3 lakes, Fountain Lake, Shields Lake, and then there's Swan Lake, an area stocked with fish and teeming with geese. Here is where you can fish, walk, picnic, and kayak. And right out in the middle of Swan Lake, there sits a mysterious island, just like Lucky Duck Lakes. And that's completely by design, as this reservoir was the location inspiration for the episode Doug's Big Catch. The island is off limits due to federal protection of geese nesting sites. However, most people coming here aren't looking to get on the water anyways. The show Doug is set in the 1960s, and at that time, this area had a completely different vibe. The park was a central topic of desegregation in Richmond just before the start of the decade, as the swimming areas didn't allow black people. Today, there is no sign that says you can't swim, but I don't think anyone would want to swim in any of these lakes considering they now belong to the wildlife. This lake makes appearances throughout the series. It's where so many outdoor adventures take place in the show. This lake also has monster folklore in the show, just like the nematodes of Stinsons Pond, which is also based on a real location called Tally's Mill Pond. Tally's Mill Pond is shown to be right by Doug's house, but in reality, it's probably the furthest away of all locations shown here. Now, before switching TV networks to Disney, Doug was a Nickelodeon show, and throughout those Nick seasons, Doug attends Bluffington School. Here he has hundreds of adventures and meets a cast of characters. One to note is the teacher, Miss Wingo. She's Doug's original teacher in the series. She's a sweet, nurturing figure in the show and is based off creator Jim Jenkins' real 2nd and 3rd grade teacher, Miss Margaret Wingo. He met her at Ma Trevette Elementary and he likens her to Mary Poppins, Miss Frizzle, and Nanny McPhee all rolled up in one. She sang in class and through the halls and encouraged him to doodle and draw whenever he could. She's had a pretty impressive impact on Jim's life, and he's shown a lot of admiration for her throughout the years. He even invited her to the premiere of Doug's first movie. But time goes on, and both Jim and Doug had to say farewell to Miss Wingo as they moved on to the next step in their lives, middle school. During his seasons with Disney, Doug attends Beebe Bluff Middle School, named after his rich friend Beebe, whose father paid for the construction. The real-life equivalent was Brooklyn Middle School, which isn't modeled after Beebe's head, like in the show, but I promise it's the right place. Cool little side note, my first time placing in any kind of organized sport was right here 6th grade year on this track. So this school brings back great memories for me all around the board. But by far the most interesting school in the show is Moody School for the Gifted. The school is home to fine arts, interpretive dance, experimental music, and of course, Judy Funnie. You see, Moody is the name of a middle school in Henrico County. It's most known for its gifted program, where students accepted into the program can learn and excel in academics, arts, music, performance, and athletics. They're basically the next generation of X-Men being trained to save the world. It's almost exactly the same as in the show, with the difference being middle school versus high school. Since I never attended Moody, I could only ever imagine what it was like. I always pictured it having state-of-the-art classrooms where everyone was either a genius or a future Basquiat. I'm glad to see my exaggerated view of the school was shared with Jim. All three of these schools are located within a half mile of each other, all within biking distance. However, what's not in biking distance is the original location of the Cloverleaf Mall. It featured a JCPenney's, Sears, and Thalheimer department store, as well as a movie theater, a food court, and many other niche storefronts. Cloverleaf was built in 1972 and was the go-to mall for Jim Jenkins and friends. It's a pillar of his childhood, and he chose to display it prominently in Doug as the Fourleaf Clover Mall. Through the years, we see dozens of episodes dedicated to Doug's mall rat lifestyle. Episodes like Doug's Got No Gift, where Doug looks for a special present for Patty but ends up spending all his money playing Bag of Nematode in the Master Blaster Videodome. Or the episode Doug's Secret Song, where Doug goes to Fourleaf Clover Mall to record a love song in the local studio. The real-life Cloverleaf Mall was an important pillar to the greater Richmond area, but at the end of the day has to end, as the mall started to decline in the 1990s. Some people cite the introduction and success of Chesterfield Town Center as the reason for the mall's decline. Others cite youth culture and the unsolved 1996 Cloverleaf Mall murders. Whatever the reason was, Cloverleaf Mall eventually shut down in 2008. That brings us to Doug's neighborhood. Doug lives in Lucky Hills. The real-life equivalent is Jim Jenkins' childhood neighborhood, Valentine Hills. It's a quaint and historic neighborhood with rolling hills and plenty of greenery, and it's been around since the 1950s. Here, Jim grew up with his best friend Tom Roberts. They've known each other since 2nd grade and consider themselves lifelong friends. Just like Miss Wingo, Jim cherished his relationship with Tom so much that he immortalized him in the show as the one and only Skeeter Valentine. And if you haven't caught it by now, Skeeter's last name was derived from the neighborhood Jim and Tom grew up in. Jim also enshrined his childhood crush Patty Hoy into the show as Patty Mayonnaise, and the school bully Roger as Roger Klotz. So that leaves us with home base, the thicket of solitude, the place where Doug reflects on his daily adventures with a journal entry. This is Doug's house. This is the foundation for one of the most iconic homes in cartoons. While obviously not a one-to-one match to the Funnie's house on 21 Jumbo Street, it is confirmed by the show's creator to be the one and only inspiration for the fictional location. Unlike in the show, there are no close neighbors like with the Dinks. The house stands alone with agriculture fields on all 4 sides. Its location feels almost eerie, so separate from the community but still omnipresent in the area, as I see it every day during my daily commute. Richmond's a relatively small city, and I love that about it. I feel really connected to everything that happens here. The close proximity to nature, the tight-knit communities, and all the ups and downs of being a small city has allowed this area to cultivate a really unique art scene. I feel Doug really captured all of this and brought it to a bigger audience. I mean, I look at Judy Funnie and I see somebody who could live down the street from me. I've seen the area being recognized for its artistic talent even more as time goes on, and I'm sure it will continue to uplift the next generations through our programs. It's just icing on the cake to me that one of the original Nicktoons, the first Nicktoon to ever air, a show that's so carefully crafted that it took the time to reimagine an entire city, is from my hometown, Richmond, Virginia. If you made it this far, take the time to drop a like and subscribe, because if you want to see more, that's the best way to do so. I also created a Patreon if you want to show further support. I'll be giving early access to content there as well as some behind the scenes content. Until next time, see ya.